It's very clear in the history, even in the recent history. For instance, before 1945, before the Second World War, there was no russophobia in the United States. There was a small occupation from some U.S. military in 1990 during the Civil War, but it was very small thing. There was no big issue, big. But after the Second World War, when the two victors, the two victory powers of the Second World War,
Right.
United States and Soviet Union, USSR, it was for the United States impossible to accept to share the power with another power.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Daniel Eschelon. Welcome to Eschelon.media. Today, my guest is a special guest. His name is Guy Mettan. He's a Swiss journalist, politician. He was also a member of the Christian Democratic People's Party of Switzerland before becoming a member of the Swiss People's Party. And he's the author of, if I'm not mistaken, 12 books. And we'll be talking about one of them. It's called Creating Russophobia, from the Great Religious Schism to the Anti-Putin Hysteria. Guy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for I am very happy to have this exchange with you. That's the first time. I hope we can
It's the
do
first,
more
hopefully,
for
first
the future.
of the many. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with your work over the years. I've followed through on the things you've done, and so this book, obviously, me being born and raised in the Soviet Union, is of great interest to me. So I guess when we talk about Russophobia, we can define Russophobia as a kind of an irrational fear of Russia, which is the key.
Yes, it could be rational, but it could be also very rational because, in my view, it's a kind of a form of racism,
Of course,
like any xenophobia. I mean, and in the West, and especially in some Western countries, it's very rational. It's very built. It's not something only emotional. It's a construction. It's a propaganda machine. So it has also very rational grounds and found, yes, depending of the people and the time. But no,
well, the key theme
it's
in
manifold.
the key theme in the study of propaganda in the West, as Russia has throughout history been assigned a diametrically opposite identity as the other. And so propaganda is, you mentioned propaganda. Propaganda is the science of convincing an audience without appealing to reason. And so the West and Russia have been juxtaposed as Western versus Eastern, European versus Asiatic, civilized versus barbaric, modern versus backward, liberal versus autocratic, and even good versus evil. And so during the Cold War, this ideological dividing line fell naturally by casting the debate as capitalism versus communism, democracy versus totalitarianism, Christianity versus atheism. So let me ask you this. What are the roots of Western Russophobia? How far back does it go?
Yeah, I tried to understand, yes, how the Russophobia was functioning in the West, and that's why I had to look deep in the history, because and I discovered, in my view, that the historical roots of Russophobia could be linked with the religious schism in the 11th century. If you remember, we were not there, but as we have, it was told to us at the school, as I have learned at the school, in the 11th century, there was the separation, the divide between the Western Christianity, I mean the Catholicism, and the Orthodoxy. And this is for me the beginning of the Russophobia. I mean, in terms of religion. The first emperor who tried to do this in the West was Charles the Great, Charlemagne, Carolus Magnus in Latin language, at the beginning of the ninth century, because he was the first which created to rebuild the Roman Empire in Rome, with Rome as a capital in the West. As you know, after the collapse of Roman Empire, it was the Byzantine, the west, the eastern part, which followed, which continued the Roman Empire. And the legitimate power of the Roman Empire was in Constantinople, not more in Rome, since many centuries. But he tried to recreate a Western Roman Empire against the legitimate power of the time, which was in Constantinople. And it was the first geopolitical divide between the West and the East. And now we are the heirs, it's an heritage of these times. And at the time, as you know, there were the ideology, let's say like that. There was no ideology, I mean political ideology. It was the religion who was the main, let's say, vision of the world. That's why this emperor tried to organize the divide on a religious basis. He was trying to make when he tried to build his empire, he gave religious roots. That's why he organized the divide between Catholic, what became Catholicism and what became Orthodoxy later in the 11th century. And after so it took time, but after that, as also you remember in the history, in the 15th century, the Orthodoxy in Constantinople collapsed because of the Ottoman conquest. After that, it was the Tsar, the new Tsars in Moscow, which who take the heritage of the Orthodoxy. And you can see that the same stereotypes, which was developed by the Catholic Church, by the Catholic popes in Rome during century, from the 11th century to the 15th century, were based on the same concepts, as you mentioned, civilization against barbarians, a kind of democracy, let's say, against despotic. So the Byzantine, the Orthodox were the despots, but not the Western kings or the Western popes and so on. So it's interesting to note that all these stereotypes were born at the time, and after the collapse of the Orthodox of the Byzantine Empire, this same stereotype were used against, not more against the Greeks, Byzantine Empire, but against the Russian and the Russian Tsars. Exactly the same things we can see now repeatedly when the Western people, the Western states, UK, United States, they try to organize, to build this Russophobia even in the 21st century. That's why I said in my book that the roots of this Russophobia are rooted so deeply more than 1,000 years ago, even if Russia at the time was not yet existing, because it was the religion who was at the and the religious divide, the religious schism, who was at the base of this Russophobic development. After that, in the 18th century, this Russophobic has left the ground of religions to become more political, but with the same type of arguments.
I have another question I want to ask you, but before we do, I want to just a quick address to our audiences. We need your help. Okay, you see the propaganda, you see the division, you see the again the stereotypes, the prejudices, the taboos against anyone who is against the group thought or group think. Which is why I need you guys to sign up to our YouTube channel. It's free. YouTube channel is free. Sign up.
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure you get the the little bell there, so you get the every time we have a new video up, you get a chance to see it. And also, those who can sign up to our channel, Media. If you want to see unimpeded information and access to this kind of interviews, which we cannot ever publish for free on YouTube because we'll just have our channel taken down, as so many of the other interviews we've done, and so many other people over the past, I don't know how many years since, when, 4 years ago. And so please do sign up to our YouTube channel, which is, again, YouTube.
Pleasure, yeah.
And so on and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's continue. So speaking of the Orthodox Church, this history, again, taboos, prejudices, stereotypes, propaganda directed against the Orthodox Church, it provides a kind of a mystic or mythic foundation that shaped Western disdain for contemporary Russia. Can you take us through that? How has that worked, again, into this equation that we're talking about?
Yeah, these stereotypes are twofold. One stereotype is about, let's say, a government, despot. That's the roots of the despotism. So at the time, they said, for instance, the popes, they said, oh, the Byzantine emperors, they are completely despotic, they are just subjugating people. There is no freedom at all. But we in the West, in Rome, in Paris, or in England, and so on, we are more democratic. We have a kind of not parliament, but some assemblies and so on. That was the first type of argument. It is the same now. For instance, in the West, they said, nowadays, we are the Democrats. That's a struggle between democracies and authoritarians against tyrannies, and Mr. Putin is a despot. Mr. Putin is a tyrant. He is an authoritarian and so on, a dictator. That's the same types of arguments. And the second one is about conquest. They present all the time, even at that moment, 1,000 years ago, even despite the decline of the Byzantine Empire, they present always the East, let's say, Orthodox Church or Byzantine emperors, Greek emperor, as conquerors. So these people, they have only one goal in their life as monarchies, is to conquer the poor West. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the same. So now, this argument you can hear every hour on the media. Russia wants absolutely to conquer the West, to take over the democracies and to put his army until to France, until to England, and so on, which is completely untrue. Because if you look at the history, it was Russia which was invaded by foreign powers, by the Mongols, by the German, the Chevalier,
by the French,
Knights, by the French, by the Nazis, by the Swedes, and the Polish. So that's completely the opposite. But that's the two types of argument. And at the modern times, there were the French kings at the late 18th centuries. They reinvent, they modernize, let's say like that. They modernize the old Russophobia, the old religious-based Russophobia, and that transform into a modern one, into let's say political and geopolitical one.
I want to ask you about Napoleon, but before I do that, before I forget, speaking. So after the Cold War, the anti-Russian propaganda aimed to filter all political questions through the simplistic binary stereotypes of democracy, again, versus authoritarianism, which provides little, if any, heuristic value to understand the complexities of relations. And so a key feature of propaganda against, again, this inferior other, Russia, is both contemptuous derision and panic-stricken fear of the threat to civilization. Russia has therefore, throughout history, been allowed to play one of two roles: either an apprentice of Western civilization by accepting the subordinate role as a student and political object, or a threat that must be contained or defeated. So my question is, what role do expansionist ambitions of Western powers play in fomenting this particular Russophobia?